Hey, it's Dave. So I just got a message from someone on Twitter. He or she is 15 years old and wanted some advice on a few areas. So here is the message. It says, "Hi, I'm a 15-year-old and I have three questions real quick. Number one, how do I find out what my passion is? Number two, what is the best life skill to know? And number three, how can I become financially free?" Now, I get a lot of messages. I don't read most of them because they all end up in my kind of this incoming requests or this message folder. But occasionally I look through some of them. And this message really stuck out because it seemed really sincere and the questions are really succinct. Finding passion. What's the best life skill, right? How to become financially free. Now, what I wanted to do is I just wanted to share some kind of stream of consciousness thoughts on these three topics. And hopefully, this person and others can gain and glean some wisdom, and it can stir some other thoughts and other discussions. So I jotted down about 5 pages of notes just in the past 10 minutes, and I wanted to go through these notes and share my thoughts. So first off, finding passion. So if you're 15 years old, or even if you're 30 years old or 50 years old, how can you find your life passion? I've been thinking about a concept, an adjacent concept, and the concept is a lot of times, in order to have a response to something, you need to have the right environment or you need to be stimulated for a response. Let me give an example. If you live in a completely isolated world, let's say you're the only person on this huge island and there's no boats, no nothing, that's going to have a radical effect and impact on the way you think, the plans you have, what you choose to do, and what your passions are. Now, if you live in a world that is very connected and you're connected to millions and billions of people around the world and their needs, then what's going to happen is you're going to have an interesting environment that stimulates you to a certain response. And your passions and your goals, your purposes, and the ways you find fulfillment are going to change radically. And this brings up another adjacent concept, which is the idea of relationships with people. Now, I think there's something very deep and substantial about our human relationships, not just with our family, but with, let's say, people not just in our city, but in our country and in the world overall. There's something about being connected with people and that relationship across many relationships that bring about a sense of need, a sense of purpose, a sense of fulfillment. And I think that interconnects with finding passion as well. So, how can you find your life passion or what you're passionate about? So, here are some practical kind of stuff I would suggest thinking about. So, first off, is to see the world. I think a lot of people, they grow up in a certain environment where they're just stuck in their own city, their own state, their own country, etc. They don't really get to see the vibrant, complex, complicated, and crazy world that we have. And so one of the things I suggest is to see as much of the world as possible. Maybe you're not able to. Maybe there's some restrictions, but at least you could actually see stuff maybe virtually, right? Through videos or through other people's experiences in the meantime. Of course, it doesn't beat actually being out there physically yourself. But see what people are like, what they're thinking, how they're living, how they feel, what their struggles are. What are they anxious about? What are their hopes and their dreams for themselves, for their children, for their family? How do they think about, right, the past, the present, and the future? And find common threads through these people and life experiences. And what you'll see is you'll see that there are certain needs, and there are actually some people in great need. And then there are also opportunities, and there are some amazing, great opportunities as well. Sometimes the needs are short term, sometimes they're long term, and yet they're historical. Sometimes opportunities can be transient, or sometimes it can be more of a long-term opportunity. And sometimes with opportunities, it's dealing with technology. Sometimes it's new approaches, new thinking. And oftentimes these needs and opportunities can intersect in a certain way where a lot of needs get met through a certain opportunity. And what you're looking for when you go and experience and jump into the world and the world around us is you're trying to soak in a deeper connection with people and their needs and how they're feeling and what they're thinking and going through, but also connect that to the opportunities that are boundless and changing in the world as well. So you're doing this thing, you're getting exposure not just to people through the world, but also to the changing world and how the world is restructuring and reordering itself. And through getting that exposure with people and the changing world, you'll have this immense amount of input in terms of people stimuli and opportunity stimuli, needs and opportunities. And what will come out is going to stimulate a response from you. Now, it might be an initial overwhelming response. It might take time to adjust to that response and to the needs and opportunities. But eventually your brain is going to sort that out, and it's going to direct you to a certain place where you're going to start to make use of your time and energy in a way to respond to that, to respond to the needs and opportunities that you see. Now, compare this to the typical approach of schooling or typical approach of growing up where you're just stuck in a silo. You're stuck not being exposed to much. The response is you're not going to have much to respond to, right? And therefore, you have this lack of passion, this question mark, this confusion over what to do, what you're excited about, etc. All right. Second kind of practical step I think you can take in terms of finding passion is exposing yourself to noble responses. So there are many different ways that you can respond to the needs and opportunities that you're exposed to. And I think you don't want to take for granted that, just because you're exposed to a lot of needs and opportunities around the world and in different ways, that you'll come up with the right response. I think you also need to expose yourself to people who have responded both in the past and presently in ways that are noble, that are very just interesting, creative, inspiring. So how do you meet these people? How do you discover these people? First off is you could read a lot. You have history at your fingertips. And yeah, especially if you can learn how to read fast and get exposed, right, to information fast, you could go through. Find people who are throughout history who are interesting. Find people who are in the present who are doing really interesting, creative approaches and that have noble kind of goals. And they're meeting needs in noble ways. And this will start to inspire you because your brain is bringing in all this stimuli in terms of all the needs and opportunities in the world. And then you bring in this additional layer, which is how certain people have responded to needs and opportunities in noble ways throughout history and in the present right now. And that's going to just all come into your brain and into your subconscious as well. And it'll start to allow you to connect your time and energy, but also developing your strengths and your interests and passions in the right way, where all these start to intersect. All right. Number 3 kind of practical point in terms of finding passion, your passion, is developing your productive strengths. So you want to really get in a place where you are really good at some stuff and you know what you're good at some stuff, and the things that you're good at add a lot of value to people. What you don't want to do is you don't want to be in a position where you don't really have much to give. All you know how to do is follow the rules, right? Let's say grew up in a schooling environment and you get good grades or decent grades, you know how to follow rules. What else do you do? Like just getting good grades, it doesn't add value to people around you, right? And so the transition or the thing you need to move into, and at 15 years old, to be honest, I want to say a bit late, but I would prefer that this mentality gets instilled in people very young, at a super young age, where they start to understand that, they can build skills and build knowledge and build experience in ways that they can start to add value, help others to solve problems, to build things, to make things better, etc. Now, in the beginning, what you want to do is, I think you want to start small and you want to do things where, let's say, there's something you're interested in where you have a short cycle, meaning you don't want to do something that will take 5 years to get done, because in the 5 years, you might be completely different after 2 or 3 years in terms of your interests and all this stuff, and I think there's also a point where you want to focus on the experience and building those skills, building kind of this value added experience and skills for you. And so create these short cycles where you can build skills in a relatively quick amount of time, in a week, 2 weeks, in a month, you do something, a short project, a short event, a short something. Go out, organize events, organize people, do something that's interesting, just crazy out of the blue. Maybe you'll fail, but maybe you'll learn some stuff, right? You'll do better next time. Maybe you need to lower your ambitions initially because the goal is you need to build these skills to be productive in the beginning. One example is, getting a few friends over and doing something productive, organizing it, right, together. When I was, I think, 15 or 16, I had this summer free, and every day during the weekdays, I would call up like 5 to 10 friends on the phone, and I would invite them to a park where we would set up a volleyball tent and play volleyball during the daytime. And I was the person who was making it happen, making the phone calls, getting the time and the date, telling someone to bring the ball, bring the net, etc., do all the stuff. And I think that stuff like that it seems so simple, where it's, just organize an event, organize a party, organize something, do something, right? Go out, try to sell a product at a farmer's market, or sell something door to door for a weekend or something, right? Make something, do something that maybe your friend's parents are struggling with in their business, and say, hey, I'm going to help you out with something. Teach something, right? Maybe ChatGPT, but you're a business owner that you know doesn't, and say, hey, I'm going to teach you in 1 hour, and apply it to their business to help their business actually try to make more money or have more customers. Anyways, the key is when you're building productive skills, what you want to do is focus on skills and strengths that can add value to others, and do short cycles where the focus is on building the skills for yourself, rather than focusing necessarily on the outcome completely right now. Once you start building those skills, you're going to start to get more confident that, hey, I'm really good at this and I can really help a lot of people. And what will happen is, don't worry if that skill is narrow at first, because actually the skill to learn those skills, you're going to apply that to other skills, and you can actually expand your skill base and have a ton of skills, and it could be really like a snowball effect. But the key is you want to get started early. You want to get started and know how to get started, right? Get that snowball started. Don't get intimidated by saying, I'll learn skills in college or after college. No one's going to teach you this stuff or tell you what to do per se. You're going to have to go out and launch. You're going to have that motivation and try new things to develop these skills to add value. All right. The second question you had, or this 15-year-old had, was what is the best life skill to have? All right, so I think there are several very kind of high-level top life skills to have. I wish I could do another video or many videos on various life skills. I think there are certain key ones. I'll go ahead and I won't cover all of them, but there's one life skill that's related to some of the things we're talking about right now, which is the ability or the skill to learn things quickly. I think this is actually a very important skill, and the idea is to have a skill and know what to do to gain proficiency at something very fast, so that you can learn that skill in a very short period of time. The reason why this is important is if you can figure this out, you can apply this process not just to one skill, but to hundreds of skills, and not just to skills, but to knowledge areas. And it really becomes this compounding impact where you're light years ahead of others in terms of what you're able to do, what you know, your experience, and this foundation that you have. So one of the kind of things that I do when I'm learning about something, a new topic, usually like a topic, I get triggered or started on that topic based upon some type of need or problem I'm trying to solve. So let's say there's a health challenge that someone has, or let's say I'm dealing with some problem in a business area or a relational issue or something going on, then I'll think through this, and there'll be an area or something that I want to do a deep dive in. And one of my things I want to do is I want to get up to speed in a specific area as quick as possible. And then I want to go ahead and apply that knowledge, right, as quick as possible too. So one example is this morning I was listening to a talk on red light therapy, where you use red light and infrared light also to stimulate various health benefits. And I wanted to do a quick deep dive on this, figure out, I have some people I know that I think could benefit them. I'm not sure in what ways and how to introduce it to them. I downloaded some talks by one of the founders and one of the key pioneer thinkers in red light therapy, and I started to listen to it. Now, I'm expecting most of the time, a lot of scholarly people aren't going to really understand things in a simple way, meaning they won't be able to articulate it in a simple way. But I think that's actually a sign of expertise. If you really understand something clearly, you can articulate it in a way that makes sense to almost anybody. Anyways, this person did a fantastic job, really went through all these areas of red light therapy, how it could be, the pros and cons and all this stuff. And it's part of the process where I'm like, oh, if I find someone who's really good in terms of understanding things, and then I'll just go ahead and watch or listen to 10 or 20 of his interviews and really get as much proficiency from this person. And this will lead me to other people in that field. And I'll just do this really quickly until I can get quick proficiency. And it can be in various forms. It could be video, audio interviews. It could be articles. It could be books. It could be different ways. And it changes over time as well, depending on the topic. Some topics are more newer, or are newer topics that require more real-time information. Some topics are older topics, right? They're like almost timeless topics that you can go to books that are more easily accessible. Anyways, there are many different challenges that you might have in your existing life or in the lives of others that you could use to try to do deep dives in topics where you can use that knowledge and those skills now to help solve problems, either your problems or the problems of others. And I think one of the key things with this skill of learning new skills to solve problems and help add value is a lot of people, they get stuck where they try something because someone told them to do something, or someone with a credential said, oh, it has to be done this way. They try and it doesn't work and they get stuck and it's just over. Now, you don't want to be stuck in that position, because the key is not doing whatever anyone tells you to do, but the key is solving the problem. You want to focus on the problem and come up with creative ideas and solutions to try to solve whatever problem you're trying to solve. And those ideas and those approaches can change and should change, because if it's a problem, it's not going to be easily solved usually. It's complex. And what someone says to do might not work in that situation. So you might have to try many different things. You might have to combine different understandings from different fields to really come up with new ideas. And that's the out-of-the-box thinking, where you focus on the problem, trying to solve the problem with out-of-the-box solutions. You start to solve one problem, and then you start to get into this snowball where you learn how to solve problems really well. And the way you learn how to solve problems really well is it's through that ability to learn things quickly, to learn skills quickly, to learn proficiency quickly, and then to cross-apply different ideas and things to create new approaches that you can try out on problems to try to solve those problems. And you get better and better over time if you practice this, especially at a young age. And so this is probably, I think, one of the most important kind of life skills, is the ability to learn quickly, to learn skills quickly that can help others solve problems, and to get into this kind of flywheel of solving problems and solving lots of problems and doing it very well. And the end result is wherever you go, you're able to add a ton of value to people, whether it's just your family, whether it's your friends, whether it's a company, etc., because you know how to learn, you know how to solve problems, you know how to think outside of the box and add value. This is, I think, one of the most important life skills to have. It's not by far the only life skill. Trust me, there are many other life skills that are important. It could be more important, actually. But this is definitely one thing I think that you should consider and think about. All right, so the last question that this 15-year-old asked me on Twitter was how to become financially free. So the question was just very succinct and a bit open in a sense, where it just says how to become financially free. Now, I don't know what this person's motivation is in terms of why they want to become financially free. People have different definitions of what is financial freedom. Some people want to live it up and have a ton of possessions and a ton of security. Others, people just want to have their basic needs met, right? Because I'm not sure exactly where you're coming from. And finances is very tied to a lot of other personal things and personal issues. So yeah, it's a very complex thing. But what I will do is I'll talk about the basic idea of financial freedom and the ways I think, or the approach I think, to get to financial freedom. So the basic concept, I think, is you want to increase your productive assets to the point where these productive assets, in one way or another, cover your living expenses, and they can cover your living expenses into perpetuity. Sure, of course, we don't know if there's really something as forever, but as long as you can see past your death, right, your assets can cover all your living expenses. I think there are two main ways your productive assets can do this. Number one is you have some assets and they produce income. So let's say, for example, you have something that's worth $1 million and it produces about, whether it's a business, whether it's real estate, whether it's just stock market assets or whatever, I don't know. And the income can come from different ways or different forms. But generally speaking, let's say you have $1 million in a certain asset and that produces hypothetically about 4% in income. Now it could produce as low as 2 or 3%, who knows, in different economic conditions. It could produce maybe 10% or 15 or 20%, I don't know. But anyways, hypothetically, let's say it produces 4%, your $1 million asset should produce, let's say, $40,000 a year. And if you divide that by 12, that's what, $3,000 a month. Now, if you have basic living expenses under $3,000 a month, meaning you can cover your rent, you can cover your food, your health insurance if you need it, any other expenses, and $3,000 covers it, then that's basically financial freedom, because your productive assets, wherever they are producing enough income to cover your living expenses, but you're not eating into your assets, meaning your assets are allowed to continue to grow. So that's one way to reach this idea of financial freedom. Now, the other approach is you have a certain pool of assets and you start to actually liquidate those assets over time, where you pull a certain percent of those assets. Let's say you pull 2% or 1% or 4% or whatever. If you pull more than 4%, then your assets are going to actually deplete or will deplete quite rapidly. So you want to, let's say, keep it at a minimum percent. But that's another kind of a way for financial freedom. Now, it's a little bit trickier in that sense, because if you are depleting assets, you don't want to deplete your assets too long over time. So you want to be investing those assets in a way where the growth of those assets overtake or are on a faster pace than how fast they are depleting, right? So the overall concept, though, is the same, which is you want to have some type of productive assets that are growing over time. And no matter what you do to eat away with that, whether you take income or you sell whatever, they're still growing, right? And they're covering your living expenses every year and the assets are still growing. So this is the picture of financial freedom. So how do you get to this place of financial freedom? Actually, one more note. If you have high living expenses, you're going to need a lot more assets, right? So let's say your living expenses are $20,000 or $30,000 a month or even more. You're going to need that much more assets, right, to cover your living expenses. A good kind of a rule of thumb is, and it's not by any means an accurate one, but yeah, if you pull 3 or 4% of your assets and it covers all your living expenses, and you know how to invest, you know what to do with your assets, then you're in a pretty good place, right? Of what a lot of people would call financial freedom. Now, there are different levels of financial freedom where you can be at a place where you're only pulling like point whatever something percent, less than 1%, but your assets are growing at a much faster pace, let's say 5 or 10%, and that point whatever 5% or 0.2% that you're pulling covers all your living expenses. Now that's a different level of financial freedom, because in that situation, even in like rocky economic times, even when your assets are up and down, they might be volatile, still you're pulling such a small percent of your overall pie and it's still covering your financial asset or your living expenses. So it's a different level of called financial freedom. I think at a certain level of financial freedom, though, it becomes, what's the point? What's the point of financial freedom if you're pulling like point whatever 0 something percent, it covers your financial assets and you're growing your funds? Like, yeah, I mean, there is, I think, something inherent, I won't say inherently, but something that can be construed as somewhat selfish, or let's say not selfish in a negative way, but self-thinking, like prioritizing yourself with financial freedom because you're looking out for your own kind of living expenses, your own freedom. At a certain point, I think it can and should transition to the point where your assets are, maybe they're grown where it's like it covers your expenses fine, and they're far more than what you can have and what your even descendants can have. And I think it needs and it should transition into an area where what's the role and purpose of your finances beyond yourself, right? What's the role of your finances and assets to help others, to be a benefit, to help others solve their problems, And personally, I think that needs to start as early as possible. Occasionally, I meet some people who start to think about that later on in life, but that the habits and the values aren't built up at an early age. And so the foundation isn't strong. So yeah, it's important at an early age to set the right foundation where you're not just, I think, thinking about my financial situation, my financial future, etc. I think at a certain point, it could be limiting. Of course, that could be needed to reach that goal, but at a certain point, I think a more ambitious goal and a broader goal would be not just financial freedom, but how can I be a financial kind of helper? How can I use my finances, right, to really help a lot of people? And how can I grow the finances to get to that point too, right? But also along the way, I think it's important to help people because you don't grow those values, you don't grow those habits in a day, right? It's something that comes out of who you are. So yeah, anyways, those are just some thoughts to think about regarding financial freedom. The idea is, how do you grow your productive assets right now? Right? Okay, 15 years old, $1 million, $2 million, $5 or $10 million of assets might seem crazy to think about right now. How do you even build that? How do you even save, right? A few $1,000s a year, you might be thinking at a certain point. And a lot of people postpone it and they think, oh, once I get a job, once I do this, I'll start thinking about saving, etc. But I think it's one point. I think a lot of times, so that's you become somewhat reactionary to how much you're able to make, and then you react by saving a certain amount, and then it's a little bit you have a restricted future based upon, let's say, whatever salary you get. I like to take things more into my own hands or into your hands as a suggestion, and start being proactive about the ways that you want to, and you are growing productive assets right now. And so there are many ways to grow many productive assets. Like, for example, one way, as I shared right now, is have an income. If you have a very high income, if you're making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $1 million a year, you could save a good portion of that every year and quickly get to this place where you might have several $1 million in assets that could provide that financial freedom. That's one way. And that's definitely one way to skin the cat. It's not the only way, right? There are many different ways. And one other way, and I think a non-typical way, is to try this area of more business and to be a little bit more, I think, risk prone at an early age, where you're trying out ideas and you're trying out small ideas to sell stuff, to make stuff, to get experience. And I think one of the reasons why I think this is enticing, and I suggest being open-minded to it, especially if you're young, is in business there can be a lot of upside, and the upside isn't really capped like typical salary jobs. Your upside in a business that you own is only capped according to the growth of the business, which it could be far greater than what some people even think about. Of course, there are downsides to business as well, which is the risk of failure, the risk of business shutting down, the risk of business just being impacted by the economy and by different factors, by lawsuits, etc. So what you want to do, I think, at an early age, is you want to try to expose yourself to the upside of business, but shield yourself from the downside of business at the same time. And the way you do it is you start small. You do small things where you don't have that downside of a business because it's not your livelihood. You don't have a ton of employees. You're just doing something for a week. You're just doing something for a month, right? You're trying to sell something, right? You're trying to knock on doors and do something. And you don't have the downsides of all this high business risk. You're not putting in 6 figures or 7 figures into a business only to lose it all. You're just putting in a couple weeks of your time, a few $100s, whatever, and you're trying it out, and you get actually exposure to the upside, which is your business can actually take off. Who knows, right? You could find some amazing thing or area that you could start building something on, and you can really grow that. You get exposed to that upside, but you don't get exposed to a lot of downside. A lot of people, when they start a business, especially later on in life, they have a more traditional thing. I'm taking out this big loan, I'm putting in all my life savings, I'm going to put in $500,000 into starting a restaurant, and they've never run a restaurant before. You're exposing yourself to all this downside, but you haven't built up your experiences and your skills to reach that point. And it's an extremely risky position to be in. So what I'm saying is that you reverse this whole thing, and you can actually almost access the potential of, the amazing potential and upside of business while mitigating the downsides by starting small, by starting young, and focusing on like building skills, right? Because those skills you can use whether or not you are in business later on, or whether, right, someone hires you later on as well. Now, I talked about a little bit about the life skill of learning skills fast. This is where you can apply that skill a lot too, where you learn skills to solve problems, you add value, and this is something you can do right now. You just add value to wherever you see people struggling with problems. It could be your neighbors struggling to do something, it could be a local business or some friends of your parents who own a business and they're struggling with something, but you're trying to get exposed to their problems and trying to solve those problems. Every business, right there, one of the biggest problems is basically businesses are in a lot of businesses are in this point where if business goes down, it's an existential crisis, meaning how do they cover the bills? If business goes up, right, it's this amazing thing. They get more profits, more rewards. So one of the biggest kind of problem areas for business is how to, right, bring in more customers to the door, how to sell more, how to make better products, how to increase profits. There's so many ways that businesses need help. And this is across the board, whether it's your gardener, whether it's the flower shop down the street, whether it's a big business, right, in downtown. They all have similar basic needs of increasing, right, customers, increasing revenue, increasing, right, the quality of the product or the appeal of the product, marketing, reaching customers, all this stuff. Anyways, if you put your skills to use in the right way, I don't think being 15 years old is too young by any means. You can be an expert on a topic, on an approach. You can add a lot of value to a ton of people at 15. Yeah, there's ways to reach people too, right, at your age too. And this world of hyper-connected internet and social media. So yeah, don't think you're too young to actually do something. And again, this is in the context of building financial freedom. So you can actually put in time and work into solving problems, adding value, getting some money, perhaps building a business that can later on build more and more resources that can add to your productive asset portfolio. So one example is I've been helping various refugees in their situation to relocate or basically try to find safety. And one person in particular, so he's an Afghan refugee wanting to eventually start a food truck. Right now, he's still in process of being relocated, but I think in the next few months, several months, he'll be relocated to North America. And I'm encouraging him to start now and not to wait to get to North America before trying to find a job or do whatever. And one of the things is, I think a lot of times we're so stuck in this traditional box where we think in order to do this, we have to take these steps to get there, right? And it's what makes sense, maybe rationally, and also is what makes sense from other people's view. But it actually entails a lot more higher risk than you might think. So if this person, he's a refugee, he doesn't know that much English, he knows some. He has some food experience, and he wants to wait to get to North America before he does anything with his food business. Now, in my opinion, that's actually very high risk because once you get to Canada, you have a ton, or North America, you have a ton of different challenges. You have language challenges, cultural challenges. You have lots of just rent to pay and living expense challenges. How do you know your health is going to be in the greatest position? You have the most opportunity actually right in the beginning. You have the most people who are open-minded, open-hearted to you, willing to help. Now, if you get stuck into this idea where, hey, I'm going to take 6 to 12 months and just figure things or look around, right? And I'm just going to get a job at a restaurant and then try to figure out in a couple of years, hopefully maybe I'll make a food truck, etc. I think what you've done is you're almost forfeiting or you're foregoing a lot of the opportunities you have at this present moment, and you're incurring a lot higher risk, I think. So this is a different approach. The approach I would suggest to this person, I have suggested, I don't know if this person will really take it because it's just non-traditional, is rather than just waiting, right, to get to North America, just to work in a restaurant, eventually start a food truck, etc. Why don't you right now build the skills that restaurants need the most and become like a world expert, like an amazing value creator right now at this moment. And then later you can expand that as you go to North America. And eventually, yeah, you could do whatever you want, whether it's food trucks, restaurant, etc. So the idea is, what if restaurants need more customers through the door, right? And what if there are new ways to market, right? Through social media, through various connections, AI, etc., to create new innovative ways, right? To help restaurants with one of their main problems. why not become an expert at that right now? Why not try a quick loop where you're getting a client, getting a restaurant, say, I'll do it for free my first week here. I'll get you more customers through your door. And you actually try it out, right? And you actually get this restaurant's website, make a ton of like social media posts through ChatGPT, make a ton of blog posts, create all these interesting memes, right, through Midjourney, posting them on their Twitter feed, all this stuff, creating this community around this restaurant, getting more people through the door, and you're an expert at getting more customers for a restaurant. Right? Get to that point where your skills are doing, and do it quick. Don't wait. Don't wait 6 months. Don't wait 12 months. Don't wait till you get to North America in 2 or 3 years. Do it right now while you have time and energy and opportunity. Build those skills. And again, it goes back to the second question you had, which is the most important life skill. Learn those skills quickly. Do these short cycles where you mitigate the risk of business, but you expose yourself to the almost unlimited, right, upside of business. Do that right now. What's stopping you? Right now, this refugee actually, he's not doing much right now. He's really not doing anything. He's just waiting. And I'm like I'm begging him, take the opportunity. Don't waste your opportunity right now, right? Don't waste whatever 6 or 12 months you have right now by just waiting and then coming to North America to find a waiter job and then trying to do 2 or 3 years before getting a food truck. That's ridiculous. Right now is the opportunity to build those skills to solve the problems that restaurants have the most. And actually, don't worry about location. You can be on the other side of the world and cater and service, right, restaurants in North America and their needs, right? This is an interconnected world. Don't worry about language problems. Work it out, figure it out, right? Do it, make it happen. And I think a lot of this stuff is initiative. And people are so scared to take risks. People are so timid. They want to go into the safety of what's been done before, right? I just want to do what everyone else does, right? Can I get a degree? Can I go to school for this or something? And it's like, come on, the world is changing too fast, right? To necessarily always have to rely on someone telling you what to do on the traditional way. And it goes back to solving problems, adding value, taking some risks, but you can do risks in a way where you mitigate a lot of the big risks, but you open yourself to these really outsized advantages and benefits. And a lot of it is a way of thinking. It's how you think about the world, how you think of opportunity, how you think of meeting needs, how you think about your role in terms of using your time and energy to build skills and productive skills and strengths, right? And yeah, some of the stuff you have to start to think about how you use your time. Now, I'm torn on some of these issues myself. So, for example, I grew up in junior high listening to baseball like almost every night for hours at a time and various other things. Some of it was productive, some of it was not. Like sports radio, sports talk, I don't know how productive that was. Maybe there was some productivity in terms of how the host communicated and discussed and debated these potential trades on baseball teams. I also listened to a bunch of, let's say, business talk radio in junior high and high school, like hours and hours every day. That actually, it was interesting in terms of it was like real business problems that people would call in for and get advice. And I think the point, though, is to think about some of the things you're doing, not necessarily to be so extreme where you don't do anything fun or interesting. I think that's important, and not to be so extreme where you're only doing things that are about making money or whatever, learning something. I tend to be more on that. My own personal approach is I have certain priorities in my life, and one is parenting is probably the biggest, along with my marriage, and that takes up a huge amount of focus and time. And I've got some other kind of priorities with helping others and business and etc. And that kind of guides me in how I should use my time and energy and the things I should learn, right, to invest in. I see some people with financial freedom where they make it such a big priority early on, and they try to go for it, and they can make tremendous gains and strides toward financial freedom in their early 20s or so quickly, very quickly. And sometimes I have mixed opinions about that, because personally, I actually, in my 20s, I was like the farthest thing from financial freedom. It was like finances was a big drag. I was barely making anything. Actually, I was started a nonprofit. I was traveling a lot. I spent over half of my 20s living overseas. And part of it was this more thing of getting connected to the world, working on a lot of my own issues and own healing in terms of just my past and trauma that I've been through. And that took a while. That took a long time. And I wasn't in a rush really for financial freedom. I don't think necessarily financial freedom is the panacea, is a cure all for all things, right? I think there's a role for it in some ways. But yeah, I don't know if it's like I don't think, I don't look at it as like this cure all for everything. For me, after I got married in my early 30s, I started a business in my mid 30s, and then that went well and we were able to invest, and then we were able to reach financial freedom quite early on. And that opened up a lot of cool things where I was able to spend more time and choose my priorities more, right? Choose the allocation of my time and energy the more. But actually, financial freedom, actually having a lot of assets could also have some not so great consequences for your character, how you view the world too, unless like you are able to maintain a deep connection to people's needs. Anyways, I think there probably is a role for balance where financial freedom is probably an important goal, but it's not the only goal. It's probably not the most important goal as well. But I think there is a balance where, yeah, it is part of the bigger picture. And I wish I could go on more in terms of just more life skills, more things about personal growth, etc. But anyways, I'll leave that for another day. I wanted to go ahead and thank the 15-year-old for reaching out. I almost missed your tweet DM, but I'm glad I was able to catch it. Yeah, if I wish there was a better way for people to reach out, because my DMs are filled with a lot of spam. Maybe 9 out of 10 are spam. So it's hard for me to go through. I wish Twitter could fix that. If I can get legitimate questions, I would love to do more of these videos and just write down notes, do a stream of consciousness, let people think about it. I don't think my answers are actually the solution, the only way to go about it. I look at it more as it's an ongoing discussion. You can use some of my thoughts to trigger ideas so you could discuss, or other people can discuss, etc. Trigger more ideas. We're bouncing ideas off of each other to get more wisdom and more creativity, more ideas. Anyways, hope this has been helpful. And yeah, we'll see you guys in my next video.